I'm Sam Rose, and you're tuning in to Commerce is Chaos, the podcast for consumer brand founders who know that building a business is messier than the highlight reel shows. Your supplier just missed their deadline, your top product is out of stock, and your competitor somehow launched the same thing at half the price. Sound familiar? Every week, we dive into the real problems that keep founders up at night, from inventory disasters to supply chain nightmares, because surviving the chaos is what separates brands that fail from brands that scale. Today, I'm talking to Chris Kolbe, who spent 30 years as a senior exec at Ralph Lauren, J.Crew, and Kohl's, and then left it all to found Hypernatural, a performance apparel brand built on natural fiber technology instead of the synthetic fabrics that built the industry he came from.
But anything that's plastic coated in chemicals gets worse when you sweat in it.
Because they're estrogenic.
Well, a lot of the chemicals have phthalates in it, and phthalates are hormone disrupting.
Phthalates are also my favorite word that has a silent P in them.
Yeah, it's a fun one, isn't it?
I actually don't know that many other words with silent P. That might be the only word I know that has a silent P in it.
Yeah, I don't know what the origins of it is, but they're nasty, and they're just part of all of this like synthetic materials and chemicals, and and they just get worse when you activate them with heat and sweat.
How did you? We're like doing the podcast, by the way. This is it.
Okay,
Hi,
yeah, just like
welcome.
well, you'll see, Sam. Like I can talk about anything, so you have to steer me a little bit.
That's great. I love material science, and I'm a big dork, so we're gonna have a fun conversation. But we can get as technical as you want.
Okay.
When did you start to get smart about this? Like, were you educated into this, or were you exposed into it? No pun. I mean, sorry, too soon. Were you overexposed?
Yeah, probably. I am not a material scientist or a chemist, but I've been in the apparel industry for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Worked for a lot of the big brands in merchandising, retail, and design, and have sold a lot of products to people that are just they're made of plastic, and they're just and I didn't, honestly, for most of my career, didn't realize how bad that was. We knew that sustainability was a bit of a problem, plastics, BPAs, all these things. But until probably when I left my last job, when I had a product for Kohl's, we had like $9 billion business, 32 brands, millions and millions of units. I realized when I left, that sustainability was a big problem, but the bigger problem was health and wellness, and that these things are there's a very strong parallel between our food, our personal care and beauty, what we're trying to remove from our homes and our kitchens and our cupboards, and our clothing. And there's very strong similarities in those, and people know the least about what they're actually wearing.
Yeah. Isn't that why? I mean, yeah, you don't think about the skin really being this like big organ that is like eating all day, whatever.
Yeah, there's the dermatologists use a term called porosity, which is you're porous. Your skin is porous, and it takes in about 65% of what you put on it.
Wow.
And most of it is unknowingly, going into your body. Right? So,
well,
yeah, it's just one of those big, kind of like, we don't think a lot about it unless it's our personal care, but our, our clothing is on our body all day long.
All the time. You got to think of, it's no surprise to anybody that lotion gets absorbed into your skin, and you realize like anything that you are sweating and wicking in, like same sort of basic physics, but like that much less observable.
Yeah.
Have you, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so that's the basic premise of Hypernatural is, so we thought if we could actually make something that's not only not hurting you and low dosing you with toxins, but if you could actually reverse it and actually puts it on your body that's health supportive, wouldn't that be a better trade? And so that isn't so hard or impossible, but we just have to really start to show people that there are better natural ways to have materials on our bodies that are aligned with everything else we care about.
Have you considered weaving the fabric that you use with things that would intentionally put things in your body?
Yeah. So putting things into your body is probably a little extreme,
I
because
understand.
well, you're getting into a category of biomaterials that are therapeutics, right? And
Uh-huh.
so there's people that do uh, there's technologies where you can basically releases things into your body, right? So we're not doing that per se. We're more focused on what it's really made from, doing things that are more bio-based, so coming from nature, things that are health supportive in terms of how they work with your body, but not necessarily in, putting things into your body deliberately, because then you're getting into medical types of products, which is, again, very different. But we think, for instance, we use jade stone. We infuse it into our fibers, and it's been used in Eastern medicine for centuries to do all kinds of things, from reducing inflammation to increasing blood circulation, but also just cooling, right? Just cools the body because
Yeah,
it's a thermoregulating mineral, and so these are things that you would want on your body versus other plastics and
right.
chemicals. So that's kind of the basic trade, and there's just lots of different ways to do it. Our technology allows us to create these different recipes where we could put things like pharma grade zinc oxide into the fibers to give you sun protection without having to use chemicals. And so they're natural solutions. Technology just allows us to put it into textiles. And again, these are things you would want to wear on your body versus
Yeah.
the alternative.
Okay, back up for a second because I jumped right on you at the very beginning. How did you get into this? What was the inspiration and what made you feel like you could really, I don't know, get edge in or make a difference in this particular kind of I don't know, like I guess d- um delivery or delight for customers of like these, these fabrics that are not only good for you but also make you maybe feel a certain way, even if that effect is not specifically therapeutic.
Yeah, so because I'm not a material scientist, I'd look at things through the
weren't
lens of,
weren't a material
yeah,
scientist,
well,
but
yeah, I play one on TV, right? But my partner is. So my business partner, who I reconnected with during COVID, develops fibers, materials, yarns, all these things. And when I reconnect with them over COVID, there was all these things that he had already created, and I was like, "These are amazing!" Like, I had no idea you could do these things. Like, you could put
right.
these things into fiber. Like, how do you do this? Like seaweed and kelp and all these interesting things. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I really came to realize that materials are a lot like beauty. It's a lot
Yeah.
like, the way we think about ingredients and all these different composites and things that we want to put recipes together to create functional benefits
Yeah.
could happen in textiles as well. But I was also really fascinated by how long he'd been doing this and how little actually made it to market. And then I
Yeah.
thought, well, I think the biggest problem here is not the innovation, but it's the commercialization and getting
Yeah.
people to understand that there are ways to do this. And so he was really focused on sustainability, which was great. He's amazing at it. But I
Yeah.
said, I think the real path here is people's health and having people realize that these things can be health supportive. And so I
Right.
got it. I looked at it more from a marketing, I guess, perspective. And then so we developed fibers that I thought would be really commercially viable, which had things like cooling and antimicrobial, odor resistance, antibacterial. These are things that people want. They want to buy and they'll pay for. Is just the market gives it to them in the form of chemicals today. But there's
Right.
actually ways to do it naturally. And so I saw a path there. And so I started, we started develop. It took us 2 years to develop it. Really third party lab testing showed that it actually did what we were hoping it would.
Mhm.
And then we put it into a product and said, let's not wait for another brand to decide that they want to do this. Let's just do it. So we
Yeah.
put it in a product and we took it straight to places like Nordstrom and started selling online just to see if people would like it. And so to our, delight, it was well received. And people, in the end of the day, people need to like it just on a basic level. This just feels good and
Yeah.
I'll pay for it, right? And then you tell them all the other things it can do, and then they get even more intrigued. And so what we realize is there's a lot of opportunity to just sell products that are just the best option.
Yeah.
let alone the cleanest, safest, most healthy option. And the market has shifted in the last 3 years since we started dramatically our way. And
Yeah.
so now we're seeing people are much more sensitive to hormone disruption, much more sensitive to these things that we're taking into our bodies. But most of the solutions are we'll just go back to cotton and wool, which is great, but this is kind of like this is the third way. And so what we're showing people is, the science is intriguing. It is
Yeah.
nerdy, but it's cool because you're working with nature, versus kind of working against it. And so that's kind of the future we think is, and that got me excited to this point where now this is basically I put a whole lot of investment into this to say, let's go build this, let's change the industry.
Yeah. And that's incredible. Okay, now I have like a dozen questions coming out of everything you shared. The first of which is some help in defining synthetic, because you're combining natural materials, and so there is some synthesis there. But also I think that there's a massive distinction between this and like, petroleum derived synthetics or other categories of synthetics where you could truly characterize in that way. How do you think about that? Like, how do you think about branding the material science of what you're doing?
So we're doing what I call bio-based materials. So
Mm,
everything is origins of natural. So whether it be coming from cotton waste or jadestone or shellfish waste or but everything's coming traceable to some bio-based synthetics. The science is we use a cellulosic process, which is like viscose, rayon, bamboo, all these things you probably heard of, to regenerate these fibers into new fiber, right? And the way we do that is we use like a chemical process, but it's closed loop, so it's being recycled, but it's regenerated into a liquid form where we can add these other ingredients into it to make it into something it never was before. And that's the science. And the science allows us to then combine these fibers that we've now recreated, regenerated with other natural things like cotton, hemp, wool. You could remix it and you start just enhancing what is natural in terms of its benefits and performance, which to me, that's the commercialization, which is people want tangible benefits. They want things that
yeah,
make them feel better, stay cooler, run faster, right? And so that's what the market has always been missing is that you got to create things that are just the best option.
right.
And we can do it without chemicals and plastic.
Okay, if you can, don't tell me anything where you're going to have to kill me afterwards, but I'm very curious in sort of like you describing maybe a visual walk down the production line of creating, or renewing this material. And I'm using in my mind maybe the framework that we're all probably familiar from like elementary school, which is how to make paper. We can
Yeah.
break down wood into a pulp and then we get it nice and wet and
Yeah.
like messy, and then we kind of like lay it out and maybe we're bleaching it, maybe not,
Yeah.
but we're coloring it, and then we're sort of like, blending blending a paper smoothie and
Yeah.
then like drying it out and cutting it, and that's how we all remember from 5th grade that paper was made.
Yeah.
um is there a similar visual walk you can take us through for how some of your reused raw materials are turned into the materials that ultimately get cut and sewn into the apparel?
Yeah. The paper analogy is not a bad one. The so there's three main layers of making fabric. There's the fiber. So think cotton, natural fiber, wool, um, plastic, right? Petroleum. Then there's the yarn, which you spin it with other fibers to make a yarn, and then
Mhm.
you knit or weave a yarn into a fabric, right? Those are the three layers. So making fiber, which is what we do, um, is really, really hard, right? You're
Yeah.
working at the lowest level. And so what we're taking is effectively waste. And so when you make a soup, basically, of cellulose, which is we
Yeah.
take cotton scrap waste from the floors of the mills. So just waste. Some
Cool.
other people might use bamboo or eucalyptus or other cellulose trees, whatever, but we just take scraps. So no trees are taken down. Then we take things like jade stone, from the waste, the mines of Taiwan. We take food waste from China, and it's all broken down. And we have a nanotechnology to takes us to a small level that it can be encapsulated almost like little pills. Okay.
Okay.
And so then when the solution is made, these things are added in almost like a recipe. So you're making a soup and you're regenerating all these things into one fiber, right? Becoming one thing. So you're mixing all these things, components, and this fiber is taken back to a solid state where then it can be spun with cotton, wool, hemp, or whatever it might be. And so you're spinning it into a new yarn. And then we take that yarn and we knit it into a fabric. And when we do it, we have to dye it at certain pH levels so we don't kill the active ingredients inside it. So it can't be too high, can't be too low. There's this like happy little middle ground where it keeps things bioactive. And so there's all this science that we do to get it to a point where you can wear it and feel like good. And then we test it and certify it as clean. We test everything OEKO-TEX 100 so that it's chemically safe. So that's at the very end. That's the gold standard for knowing that what's on your body is not toxic. It's not
Yeah.
going to cause you trouble. Now we use special dyes, stuff, and colors when we do it because a lot of times the dyes are also very toxic. To certify those are clean as well. And so there's all these steps that go into this I call it the 3 layers, just to make a fabric. And then once we make the fabric, we'll sew it into whatever is we're going to make. And so the fiber process is we have a utility patent on that process, and we
Got it.
use roughly 88 different ingredients, including jadestone and crab shells, to make that composite, what gives you the functionality of Hypernatural today. So it's complex for sure. And my partner is the genius. And so when they decide to put more zinc in or whatever, it's just like it's this mad science kind of thing. And then you have to run it all the way through the system to test it to see if it works. And so that took us a couple of years to do to get to a place where we had
I
something.
bet. Yeah. Gee, that's incredible though. And thank you for sharing so much about it. It's so fascinating. Um, is there a fabric recipe? Oh, okay. Well, maybe let me ask it this way. Like how many, other than the color, and some of the, I don't know if I could call them active ingredients from a compliance perspective, but say like, uh, beneficial ingredients.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you call them ingredients, but anyway,
Well,
you know what I
we
mean.
call them ingredients, but
Yeah. Okay,
it's
great.
all about the benefits, right? So
Perfect. Beneficial ingredients. So other than sort of those two components going in to create differentiation in what I might perceive as either the appearance or the efficacy or functionality of a fabric, are there other recipes that you have within the fabric? Like some of them are maybe more stretchy or not stretchy, or more breathable or not breathable. I guess what I'm asking is how many different fabric recipes do you have, and do they vary beyond the kind of two basic low hanging fruit things that I pointed out?
So we have more or less one fiber recipe, which has the jadestone
Oh,
and crab shells in it. But we have 5 or 6 other ways we could make it in the future. Like I mentioned, the sun protection with like pharma grade zinc oxide. So there's all these different additives we could put. But today we have one that we use. We spin that into 2 or 3 different types of yarns, different sizes, different combinations of other, materials like cotton or sometimes it's Supima cotton, sometimes it's good earth cotton. It just depends on what we're trying to do. And then we knitted into 3 or 4 different kinds of fabrics. And when we started out, we kept it that simple
wow.
because that's how you, as a startup, you avoid going out of business, is not overdeveloping.
Yeah.
And, being in the industry for so long, I've seen so many people, they develop stuff and then they go around to all the different brands and they're like, do you like this? Do you like that? And pretty soon you're developing all of these things and nobody's buying anything. And then you just go out of business. And so a lot of these material companies that are technology oriented never get anywhere because they just go around and round and round and they don't get any traction. So when we started, having seen this movie before and being one of the brands for a long, long time that would see all the technology come, you realize that the only way you really get brands on board is you prove it to them. And
Yeah.
you go out to the market and you just basically you create your own momentum. You show people that, A, people like it, B, people are talking about it. you can go on shows like this and talk about it. People are interested in what you're doing. Then the brands come.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did differently.
And do you have how much of your business today, and then what's your sort of ideal future state of you using your own technology for the benefit of your own brand and kind of like building that apparel side of the business versus something that's a little bit more B2B focused?
So I look at it like a pyramid. And so when I worked at Ralph Lauren over the years, what I learned is really great brands are built where they get everybody to look at the top of the pyramid and they want the top of the pyramid, but then you sell them at the middle and the bottom.
Okay.
And so what we did is we decided to start at the top of the pyramid and you're going to build Hypernatural as a brand, start telling people about this issue, showing people that there's better ways to do this, be premium, be aspirational. Then over time, you bring in other people to build out the middle and the bottom. So you could do that through partnerships, you can do that through licensing, but you can't start at the bottom. You have to start at the top. And so we've started at the top and we're working our way down. And then the middle and the bottom could be any combination of verticals. We're built to be an ingredient brand over time. Think Gore-Tex, things like that. But the Gore-Tex took 20 years to build, right? It's just these things don't happen overnight. So
Yeah.
we're working our way down and we're finding ways to build through partnerships. But we have proof that people want this. We have proof that we can lead this conversation and show people that the status quo doesn't have to be what it is today.
How much of the business is sort of like folks working on that top of the pyramid, brand building, say like, sales operations and marketing and customer awareness and product development that's sort of at the tail end of that product life cycle, where at the beginning of the product life cycle, you're contemplating materiality and efficacy and all of these things. Like on a percentage basis, has the business, because you've commercialized in this way, thrown its weight to those kind of front lines of sales and brand awareness, or do you still find yourselves very like R&D heavy as a business on a, say, personnel basis or a spend basis?
Cards on the table. Your tech stack is held together with duct tape and prayers. If you're a brand founder or COO juggling Shopify, your 3PL portal, 3 different inventory trackers, and yes, that one crucial Google Sheet, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Orders get lost, inventory counts are fiction, and your seamless integrations break every other Tuesday. Endless Commerce changes the game. One platform for everything. DTC, wholesale, marketplaces, the works. AI-powered forecasting, real-time inventory visibility, and integrations that actually integrate. Teams like Great Jones, Food 52, and Pattern Brands already made the switch. Ready to ditch the chaos? Visit endlesscommerce.com, mention Commerce is Chaos when you reach out, and get 3 months free. Because your ops stack should be your competitive advantage, not your biggest headache.
The first 2 years very R&D heavy.
Yeah.
Now it's very marketing heavy. And we're moving into the story phase of telling people the story, getting people to want to join us, and then figuring out where they want to go. And the way you build businesses now is you listen to what people want and then you give it to them. You don't go out and guess. And so right now we do men's shirts. But in the last 6 months of marketing, we clearly need women's product. We clearly need underwear. And so there's all these things that people are just asking for. And so we've done the research and we have the sales to prove it, to say, okay, well, that's how we'll grow the business. And so the next wave, we'll probably go back to a product cycle, back to an R&D cycle, and then we'll start building it. And then we'll go back into a marketing cycle as well. So as a startup, we can't do too much at once.
Yeah.
We're still very small and fractional.
Right.
Because we've gone through a period in our industry since 2022 that has been really difficult for the apparel industry. It all started with COVID. Well, COVID, inflation, tariffs, war, repeat, right? So and so, not to go down that road, but I would tell you that, uh, we've been trying not to die for 3 years, right? Because it's been that tenuous in terms of uncertainty, difficult to find capital, very difficult to get people to want to do anything different, right? Literally, like the status quo is so locked in this environment because people are just afraid to change on anything
Yeah.
business wise. And so we've had to walk a real narrow path, and we have not died. We have actually gotten to a point now where it's like, okay, now I think the world's more ready for this now. But
Yeah.
it's taken 3 years, and it's, I've self-funded most of the business to a point where I have a great personal risk in the
Yeah.
success of this. And I didn't set out for it to be that way, but I believe so much in it that, I realized that that is the only way it will make it, is if I can walk this narrow path.
Yeah.
And so we're doing that, and I'm really proud that we're now starting to accelerate. But it has been the last 3, 4 years has been unlike anything I've seen in my 30 years in the industry.
Wow. And yeah, I mean, you have the receipts for that. Like, you know how this industry works. It's not like you just jumped into it cold and said, "I want to build a t-shirt company." Like you know the big mechanics called the macro mechanics at play in the industry.
Yeah, and then you couple all this with AI that's happened, and so AI is great. Trust me, we use it a lot on things that don't touch the customer too much, but it's also taken most of the capital in the market. So from a funding perspective, funding early stage product companies has been a really bad neighborhood for investors to go into. They've avoided us no
Yeah.
matter what. We have patents and stuff. I mean, we have all these things that
Right.
investors usually would want. But we've run into is that, so much has gone to AI related investment that it's just taken all the oxygen out of early stage stuff. And so we're just going through this wildly unique period to do something. And if I didn't see so many proof points for what we're doing and why the world wants it and needs it, I would have quit a long time ago. But I think, it's just one of those things where we've been tested all the way,
Yeah.
and we're still standing.
Um, what should we do about that? Not necessarily about your situation specifically, but where do you feel like something's got to give in the world of, venture related to consumer? And one of the things that has been kind of living rent free in my head is that venture's not venturing right now. Like, it's starting to get very, very private equity flavored in a way, or what I would have 5 or 10 years ago characterized as like, "Oh, you're looking for something that's, like, proven and practically profitable," and, like, has, like, all of these, like, reliability signals that do have nothing to do with being venturesome, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's a really hard one because venture changed too, right? In a lot of ways, and where funding's coming from has changed a lot in the last year. Um, it's just, it really it's not an environment where quality is enough of what you're doing. There's a lot of luck. There's a lot of, access, if you will, is really, really important. But on just quality of your merits isn't enough.
Yeah.
And that's the sad truth is that, and it used to be the opposite, which is you didn't have to have the quality. You just were just in the right place, right time, you got funded. Now you have to be near perfect, I would
Yeah.
say, in what you're doing. And so for us, it's taken longer to get funding raised, but when we get to the right people, it's worth it. And so our first investors that came into the company were the original founders of Land's End, which I happened to be the president of at one point. Um, and, and,
Sort of
and
new.
and unrelated, I found them literally like, many years later. Um, but they're really amazing people who know this business. They're really ethically driven. They have really great values. They happen to live 15 minutes from my house. However, I went all over the world for funding. So it all came back to this like natural place of where we found the right people. And it just comes down to you got to find people who care about what you care about. They are out there. And in our case, um, it helped being in the industry for 30 years because,
Yeah.
I knew a few people, but I would tell you that even then it was very, very difficult.
Are you like a wartime founder or a peacetime founder? Like, how much is this pressure, especially like the financial aspect of it, an environment that you thrive in and is like helping you stay hungry, drive innovation, all of that stuff versus like, oh dear God, let this end as fast as it can. Like, I want to get around the corner. And I'm not necessarily characterizing one as better than the other necessarily, or at least I hope I'm not over characterizing it. But is this part like just the hard thing about hard things and you'll get around the corner to it? Or do you find yourself like drawn like a moth to the flame of
Mhm.
like biting off really big, hairy things?
Yeah. I'm definitely the moth to the flame. And you know what? You can't be in my industry and be anything other because it's the apparel business is very, very, very difficult. Um, and it is very different than most other businesses, the way it works. And so I guess you have to be a little bit of a masochist to really, do well. And I
Yeah,
work well under pressure for sure. And I do think, right now we're living in a world where a lot of the current environment is getting rid of the the crap that's out there in a good way. Because it's been a couple decades of in my industry of things that are, fast fashion, all this stuff that just it just isn't good in the end. It's filler, empty calories, it's processed foods, and all of this stuff is starting to suffer and go away in a very good thing. So the creative destruction I think is good. Um, Standing through it requires a lot of fortitude and it requires some perspective. I'm fortunate I've been around long enough to see it a few times. This is just unusually hard, this one, because of all the things I mentioned. But I would say that my purpose has never been greater. So
yeah,
much so that I'm willing to take great personal risks to do this because I basically decided I don't want to die knowing that all I'd sold to people is a bunch of plastic crap they didn't need
right.
over my career. And I didn't want my kids to sort of see me as this peddler of plastic who, made a good living selling people stuff like that. And then that was it. And actually, so what I'm really proud of is my kids are watching me do this and they're learning that this isn't easy. This is really, really hard. But if it's worth it, then yeah, do it.
And and if it's worth it, it'll be fun. I think that's the biggest difference for me is that like if I'm when I'm the most self-actualized in whatever I'm doing that's like the hard foundery, like unsolved problem, nobody here to help, I'm alone. And
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, but this is a game. and and this is a puzzle that I want to solve. And I that's when I'm that's when I'm most at like the balance of peacefulness in it, like, there's a type of zen in the struggle of it all.
there is.
Like,
Well,
you
there's
know
there's there's purpose in it, and so I'll tell you that in my career, my best relationships, my best friends, my best memories are the ones I went through with in a very difficult way. The cotton crisis, the Great Recession, all of these stories that I have, my best friends and relationships, and this Hypernatural will be no different, will come from all of those struggles and making it through. And there is no better way to say that life isn't supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
And if you do those hard things, there's nothing more gratifying.
My connection just went weird for a sec, but
Oh,
we're back.
okay.
I think we're
All
back.
right.
No, the things that I would have said if we hadn't, like, one-shotted this recording are we can edit anything you want, it's recording on the side,
Yeah.
and we'll do a fake goodbye at the end, and then we'll do a real goodbye. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah. No, I'm good with that, and I figured so. But
um,
yeah, no, this is fun. So, what else can I share with you?
I wanna know about the cotton crisis. Tell us the story of the cotton crisis.
Yeah. So I was the president of Land's End. It was 2010, 2011. Uh, when I look back now on it, it's almost cute. But all of a sudden, like you're in a business where you know the cost of apparel since 1990 in total has gone up an average of 7%, where the cost of everything else has gone up 150% since 1990. So apparel's had no inflation for the last 26 years. And so when your cotton prices, which is a commodity, right? If the cotton crop isn't good, the harvest is bad, storms, what all these things that happen around the world, all of a sudden your prices will double overnight. And your cost input all of a sudden is dramatically higher. And then you have to find a way to manage that in your business when most of what, in this case, we did was cotton. And so you can't just raise all your prices. People won't pay more for things that they thought, cost the same as last year, right? And so when you're in a business with commodities, you run into, so we had a cotton crisis, drove up the prices dramatically. We basically had to find a way to hide the margin hit and try to take prices up slowly. And one of the ways we did it is we offered more new product in better quality, but we had to charge more. So we added things like Supima cotton, which was the best 1% of cotton in the world, grown in the United States. And Land's End used to be famous for. We brought it back and we put into more things and we charged more, but it was a better product.
Yeah.
That had some elasticity to it. That worked. The things that cost more, but they were exactly the same as before, those things dropped 30% instantly. If your prices went up 30%, the business went down 30%. Just economics. And so you just start learning, like, it's just economics 101 every day with each and every product you're making is what can you charge? What can you not charge? And so cotton will bubble up and then cotton will come down, and so you're constantly riding these waves. But in this case, it went up dramatically overnight. That is very minor compared to what happened with tariffs and more recently, all the supply chain things, because now everything just went up overnight, instantly. And as I mentioned, apparel has not gone up in price for 26 years. All of a sudden, everything is going to be just a lot more expensive. People won't pay more. So when the prices go up, demand will go down. And so we've been dealing with that in the last 3 years between tariffs and inflation, hitting everything in a category where people are feeling squeezed, right? And so these are the things like how do you communicate to people the value of what you do when the inputs are going up dramatically?
Why has the price of apparel not grown like the price of milk or gas or anything else?
Well, it's economics. So in 1990s, we started offshoring our production of textiles and manufacturing. And so what was costing $6 an hour here would cost $1 an hour over there, right? So offshoring started in the 90s in a very big way. In the last 25 years, that has bent the cost curve down dramatically. We've also shifted a lot of our textiles to plastic. And so, petroleum, you don't have to grow. There's no farmer. People just come in, oh, you want more? We'll just make more, get more oil, just make it, right? So when you start shifting things to petroleum-based things became more cost effective, more easier to control the costs in the overall supply chain. And so all of these things we're working towards lowering costs while increasing the output, right? And so what came of that? Fast fashion, right? Started selling millions and millions more units of stuff, buy it, wear it 3 times, throw it away, right? We started making athletic apparel. Plastic is tech gear. That is performance. You should want this. It quick dries, does all these things.
Right.
We sell more and more and more plastic, right? Because the market has been convinced that's worth more, but it actually costs a lot less to make plastic versus cotton and wool.
Right.
And so all of these things have bent the cost curve down over the last 26 years in a way that people just don't think they should pay more than $25 for a t-shirt. And the truth is, you should be the most afraid of the $20 t-shirt because that thing is probably laced with all kinds of stuff you don't want. Versus the all cotton shirt that is organic or Supima, like, yeah, it's going to cost you probably 70 or $80, but it's not going to harm you. And so all of these sort of things have come up with economics as the underpinning of the current state, you know, what people will pay, what things really cost.
It's fascinating when you talk about kind of, you have, I think, the benefit of all of this experience, and also just that kind of hyper educated lens on what are the mechanics and levers that are making the whole business tick, which I find fascinating. And now I really kind of want to pay $70 for my t-shirt. You're doing a good job of convincing me.
Well, one of the things I learned at Kohl's is that, what people truly equate as value is how many times they can wear something. Like
Yeah.
there's a value equation in that. And so if you wear things 3 times and you have to throw it away versus if you can wear things like one good thing, but wear it for 3 to 5 years, like that's value too.
Yeah.
And we just got to train people to think more that way. That you don't need like 100 cheap things, you need 10 good ones, right? And the 10 good ones should be good for you and good for everyone else. And that the 100 things should never have been made in the first place.
There was as a much younger entrepreneur, I wanted to build apps, and I was like, it'd be really cool. And has to have done this, and if not, here's a free idea. Someone please vibe code this and let us know next week. We'll have you on the podcast. But like a cost amortizer per wear. So like I'd put something in my closet, I'd take a picture of it, and then I'd somehow calculate, manually could calculate how many times you've worn it and then be like, that dress cost you $300 to wear that one
Yeah.
time.
Like
And I felt
mileage
like
on a
that would
car.
encourage
Yeah.
responsible usage of the things that I bought. Like there's a $600 coat in it because you had to go to Montana once. And like it
Right.
was going to be really cold. You should
Yeah.
probably take another trip.
Well, yeah. So, just people don't have much, they don't pay a lot of attention to what they wear, let alone how often they wear it or what's the true value of like, if I bought this, how many times have I worn it? Just don't people think a whole lot about it. But, the thing I've learned in this business as a merchandiser is, everybody has a uniform. Everybody, particularly after the age of 40, you pretty much have a uniform, you stick with it. You know what works for you and you
Don't
just
judge
iterate.
me.
Listen, it's great. It's perfect because once you figure out the uniform of your customer, you just iterate on that all day long. And so the things that you wear most of the time, 80% of the day, 80% of the week, those are the things you should invest in and have the best quality. The natural fibers, the things that are you could wear here and there.
Yeah.
That's where we're focused on with Hypernatural. That's the stuff we want you to wear. And then those will be those fun, like once in a while things you wear, or things are very occasion or they're very high seasonal. Those are great. But they don't have to be super nice because you're not going to wear them all the time. And, even if they're plastic, who cares, right? But your underwear, the things you're sweating in, the things that you wear 80% of the time, quality.
You should care. I think this is an Eileen Fisher anecdote, if I'm recalling it correctly, but that brand started as like in search of a uniform for like women in the workplace, basically, and that men had like a really easy go-to uniform, and women didn't have the same sort of thing, and that always kind of stuck with me as like a lens to look at apparel on. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
what's your uniform? What is your
Yeah.
uniform?
It's a Hypernatural shirt and my old Levi's, and maybe I'll throw
Pretty
a cardigan sweater over it on a cold day.
nice.
The But Eileen Fisher's a great example of brilliant business model. My partner actually makes fabric for her. They
Yeah,
are very sustainable and clean, high quality. The stuff it's mix and match, wear every day. Lasts for years.
yeah,
Um, that's that, and it's not inexpensive, but it's quality and it's
yeah.
clean. And I think there's just not enough businesses like that. And so I think that to me is, there are good examples out there for sure.
My uniform is I don't know if it's good for me or not. But it's usually a t-shirt, black or white, And this worked for me. This is now I'll signal my age. Like Lululemon tights, which worked for me for so many years. And so I have just like all of the tights and t-shirts and then like usually like a shacket or something. And I just don't have to think about it, which is the Mark Zuckerberg school of thought. I'm just like, or maybe no, he got it from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs school of thought of just
Yeah.
like, pairing
I think that's 80% of people,
there.
honestly.
I love
Most
that
people
you're
don't want
pointing
to think
that
too
out.
much about it. So
Yeah, yeah. It's maybe less uncommon than I was giving it credit for of just like having the go-to thing. Do you how much more of the uniform do you think as a business you guys will take on over time? You've got the top and some of the you're moving to the bottom.
well, I think to me, like I like to cover that 80% for people,
Yeah.
but do it in a really simple, versatile, smart way. So you're not like, if you want to detox your wardrobe, it's not like a complete like, um, you have to come up with like $50,000 to do it.
Yeah.
You can do it in a smart, simple way. I think that's the way we would want to build it. And I think from the inside out. So what you wear on your first layer to your second layer, like that's what we would focus on. Like I love to replace your leggings because most leggings are not,
Killing
you
myself.
know, they're not natural. But these are things where over time with a little more R&D, we'll come up with ways to do that. But it's not easy. Like even the stuff that I want to do will take time to develop. And so how do you just walk people down a path of detoxification and wearable wellness in a way that it doesn't feel like you're overwhelmed or you have to take out a loan?
Right. Or that it's like as you said, people want to buy the best thing, is particularly in the apparel category. And I think beyond what we can see, kind of like very health driven behaviors permeating and then kind of like expanding in the world of CPG more easily because it's so obvious that like putting things in our mouths and eating and drinking. But I have to imagine, as you implied at the beginning of the conversation, that buying behavior is really different when the kind of perceived ingestion of whatever it is like that much lower.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite quotes from our research is, I realized polyester was bad for the environment, but I didn't realize it was bad for me, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, now I care, And so I do think that's how people think. And so I think getting people to understand just the connection with food and beauty and how it all relates to our environment that's creating all this chronic disease that we're living with
Yeah.
is all related to our environments. The majority of it, it's not genetics is a small percentage of what's driving it, but our environment's creating it, and our apparel is just part of that. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be alarmist. You just have to be able to give them good information and better choices. And that's how clean food and clean beauty became so big because consumers demanded it and they found better options.
There's something so touching in the way that that's phrased because it really does say everything about how much we've dissociated ourselves from our environments. Like the difference between you and your environment is in that sentence, but at the end of the day, that that should be like really narrow space. like like the liminal space between you and your environment is ought to be nothing, or at least I think that we'd all benefit from appreciating more how much we're a direct product of that and not just like an independent actor within it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, listen, if I had a spectrometer, I could go around and let everybody like take a quick measurement of the toxins in your clothes, or you had to put it on a hang tag on how much toxins that were in your clothes, it would
Yeah.
change people dramatically, right? You just instantly see the problem. But now the problem's invisible, and there's a bit of like, well, like, where's the science on all of this? And you're like, well, there is science on all this. It can't tell you clinically exactly how long this is going to impact you long term because your environment's contributing so many different things. But there are science around this, but people they just don't believe, right? They don't want to believe something they can't see. And so that's the hard thing with what we're doing. And I'll tell you a quick story. Like, when I was at Land's End, About 5 years after I left, we used to do uh, uniforms for airlines, and so we did the Delta Airlines uniforms in I think it was 2008. It turned into a lawsuit because the flight attendants were having skin irritations and rashes, and some people were being hospitalized from these uniforms. And the flight attendants went to the unions. They basically refused to wear them. There became this big thing, and they were told that basically it's not the uniforms. That's not the problem. And so people were having all these people losing their jobs. There's all these things turned into a big lawsuit. Um, Eventually, it was uh, the companies that made the product, including Lands' End, were found not to be liable because they couldn't entirely prove the toxicity of what was in the clothes, even though it was pretty obvious. And so the burden of proof for this toxicity, very, very hard, because it's all on the person that's doing it clean, on the victim. And it's very hard to be conclusive in the evidence in a legal format to actually have a conviction. And so I think the unfortunate truth is, like lead and asbestos and all these things that happened over the last, it takes decades for these things to eventually become understood. Cigarettes, same thing. And this is probably just like that, where people can't draw a straight line to it all. Therefore, we kick the can. It's inconclusive. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Nothing really changes until the consumer says, no, we don't want it anymore. We're not paying for it. We won't buy it. And then everything will change. And so it won't be the government. It won't be the judicial system. It'll be the consumer that will make all the difference.
Feel like, mothers against drunk driving. Like, gotta stand up to it. Okay, so that's a decades long process at the least. Where are we on the beginning of awareness of these sorts of things, and maybe where do you perceive that to have started, even on a timeline, relative to where you think there will be enough consumer understanding and behavioral change to really like make an impact that lets the rest of the dominoes fall in the right direction of like the businesses start changing their textile buying behavior, say?
Yeah. So the good news is, and listen, we've done our own research, done some surveys, and when you speak to people who care about their wellness and they're into fitness and things like that, the awareness levels are like 40-50% already. They're already aware of this and looking for alternatives. You talk about people who are slightly concerned about it, it's almost 70%. So people that you would think that are already detoxed other elements of their life, they're invested in wellness and health and fitness, majority of people are very aware of this. The degree of the problem, what are the real, sort of better options? Very low awareness. And so there's a big gap between, I know a little bit, but I don't know what to do. And when you get beyond that, you get to a lot of general population where, 20 to 30% just don't really care because they don't want to pay more.
Yeah.
And so that you're always going to have that too, right? And so, but I look at it very much like food and beauty, is that, it wasn't like all the grocery stores overnight went organic. It starts with a section, right, where you shop your organics, and eventually there's a Whole Foods, or there's a specialized store that has all of these things, but it's still the minority of the total. But you start seeing it more and more offerings, because that's what consumers want. And I think this won't be any different. Like 10, 15 years ago, there's 2 or 3 clean beauty brands at Sephora. Now there's like over 200.
Right.
And so this is what happens. And eventually the L'Oreals and the Lancomes change too. And that's how a market-based economy really will change.
Yeah. We've spent so much time, and thank you for indulging me because I love material science. So spent so much time talking about that, but I want to bring some light to the other aspects of this apparel that make it the best, since we've identified that that's like really the North Star of it all. How much is like fit and color and these other aspects of apparel design, which I'm probably butchering. So you could you could make me and everybody else smarter on that too. How much are these other aspects of innovation, say, part of the R&D cycle for you, and maybe just give us kind of a few tidbits about how you approach something like, I don't know, collar design, or like where where the end of the sleeve lands on the bicep, and these other things that like make a shirt perceivably quality or the best, whether or not you are wearing it or just like standing inside Nordstrom, like looking at it and saying, "Oh, this is really nice."
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the merchandiser answer, which
Oh,
is,
perfect. That's what I'm
yeah,
signing up for.
yeah. So the industry insider would say, uh, particularly for men, okay, because that's what we're selling today. Um, no matter what you're doing, fit is number one. And so if it doesn't fit well, nothing else matters. Right. And so either fits right, and there's a lot of things that go into making things fit well, but it has to fit well and fit consistently, so that you can come back and buy more without any hesitation.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two is fabric. Fabric, you get a really nice fabric and fit, you get loyalty. People will come back, and the fabrics are something that is more visceral, and so you experience it. It does this, it does that, or it does it, like, it clings to me and I hate it. These are all the things that people love or hate once you start wearing something. And fabrics are, because they're so visceral, a lot of times people don't know why they like something or not. They can't tell you, it just feels good. Like,
Mm.
women will say it feels flowy. There's all these like
Yeah.
words that people use to describe things for the way they feel, but it's really, really important. And then third is styling and detail. And so people might say like, well, it has to look good, but if it, um, yeah, of course. But if it doesn't fit well, have good fabrics that work for you, the styling doesn't matter, usually. And this is more and more true as you go up the ladder of premium and luxury, right? Um, and so this fit styling comes a lot into detail, color, all these things, they all matter. And the hard thing about doing what we do is you got to really get all three of those things to work most of the time, because people are very unforgiving when it comes to, they don't like it, they just return it. If they don't like it, they'll never come back, and they won't tell you why. And so I always work that way: fit, fabric, styling. And then once you've figured out the fit and fabric, the styling evolves, right? And so you change a collar, you change a button, you change a pattern, and you iterate. And it's very easy for people that wear uniforms to follow along, right? You can stay with your favorite brand because the fit, fabric, and styling moves with you. And that's how you build a really nice business. But then occasionally you got to introduce new things.
Yeah.
And so when there's a shift, and this is where women's is a lot harder than men's, all of a sudden people go from big over skinny to skinny with big on the bottom. And all of a sudden the whole thing flips.
That's my problem.
And then all of a sudden, like, you got to like rewire the whole fit fabric construct, and you have to start over. And so women's is harder. And so, and women's is similar to what I described, but things will change quickly like that. And then you have to evolve how you do that. And so that's where having a good sensibility of your consumer and what they are, who
Yeah.
they are, what they wear, how they wear it, is really, really important. And fashion is a hard business that way, because there's a little bit of it just feels right kind of thing to it, where hard data analytics won't exactly tell you when that big over skinny shift will happen. But I've worked at companies like, particularly Urban Outfitters back in the day, where we literally had things getting ready to leave the factory, and we were like stopped it. We said, nope, this is all wrong. And we like flipped it around, and we had to fly in the goods just to get the right mix of product because the trend had changed. And so that's gotten easier with AI, because you can now start testing things virtually and doing all these other things to kind of find out when things are going to shift. But the world moves faster than ever, and so do trends. I prefer to build a business that's built on consistency and quality, because the fashion part it's a game. It's very hard to keep up with over a longer period of time. And so in our case, fit, fabric, good quality, good style. That's kind of how we're building out that 80% of your wardrobe.
And to your, well, let me ask first. We're at time. I can get you out of here. Do you have a hard stop?
I
Because
got a few
otherwise,
minutes. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I'll ask you.
Yeah.
I'll ask you one or two more questions. Um, if you could bring back the big over skinny trend, by the way, I'd be very grateful because I invested in a wardrobe that was exactly that. I remember, so I was in high school when, like, I don't know, Britney Spears and J.Lo were really popular,
Right.
and it was skinny over big, right? And there were, everything was like a crop top and like a midriff showing, and that was really hard to be a 13-year-old within because it was
Yeah.
just exactly the wrong age. Everything was so awkward and
Right.
like I don't, I just didn't have it. And so then, some numbers, but say like at five, by the time 5 years more or 7 years more came around, it was like, okay, well, now what we're doing is we're doing skinny, big over skinny. And I was like, well, that's much better for me. And we've given a gift to the world, which is that we fought against like belly buttons and
Yeah.
like one. And then it came right back. And I just realized like I just have to be a passenger on it all.
Yeah. No, well, the good news is the 90s have had a good run, so the next will be the 2000s, and we'll be back to low rise and
I can't even remember.
belly
Yeah, low
buttons.
rise and then what, yeah, what was after that? Then it was like cargo, maybe. Cargo and low rise were maybe around the same time.
Yeah, well, that's for early 2000s where skinny really took off. I was actually at Urban Outfitters at the time, and we're like, skinny jeans is like the big bet, early
Yeah.
2001. Yeah, that went for like, 20 years, right? So
Yeah.
it's a good run.
I I guess what you're saying is I had a good run.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like that's a good run in fashion.
Fair.
Like,
It had a good run.
a
Yeah.
decade is a really good run.
How often does, okay, so for something like the fit of a men's shirt, which is, I think on the scale of fashion, a relatively predictable thing, right? There's a little baggier, a little skinnier, but generally speaking, like I feel like that should be one of those things that's kind of closer to, um, you know, a constantly renewing fashion, or like not, it doesn't change all that much, not that unpredictable. I guess what I'm awkwardly trying to ask is there like a platonic form of really good men's shirt fit that if you only knew what that was, and maybe you do, you could pattern match to that, and then like people would just be happy, and everyone who's sort of like missing that marker doesn't have that secret knowledge, like they're the ones with the ill-fitting shirt, or
Mhm.
how do you dial in on what that means at a given point in time? And is it like one thing?
Um, there's some basics, we call them fit camps. So, and they
I'm
usually are
learning
more
so
related.
much today.
Yeah,
This is great.
they're more related to body type probably than anything. And so like in our case, we make two men's shirts. We make a classic fit, fits most people, pretty democratic, and we do a skinny fit or a slim fit. And that fits people that are probably more fit or just, like a closer to the body fit, right? The two preferences, and we can cover most people with both.
Yeah.
Um, and and sometimes the same person can wear both, but they'll wear a different size in each, right? Um, and so when we launched, I kind of knew that's generally how it works, and so that's how we were able to kind of keep it simple. And so far, 3 years in, we haven't had to change it a lot. The only thing you'll change mainly, you'll slightly make a sleeve longer or shorter, or collar will be wider or narrower, but it's very evolutionary, right? And that's the beauty of men's. Um, Now, we just launched a loose fit unisex t-shirt last week that literally is for men and women, and it is very under the age of 35, 90s styling. It's a lot cooler and it fits everybody, but not everybody wants to wear a loose fit boyfriend t-shirt, right? But it just comes down to preference
But some
often
of
more.
us do.
It's just preference. Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, and I love it because, now my kids they like what I'm doing because I got stuff they like, right?
Right.
And so fit is a lot about sensibility. Um, and then sometimes it's about body type, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so that's where but you can usually statistically get people into about 6 or 7 different fit camps in the population in the United States. There's body measurement studies.
Yeah.
And you can tell even like regionally, like people in the Southeast have a different body type than people in the Northeast. And there's all that kind of stuff too. So I've seen both, but I generally have deduced it down to 2 or 3 things.
Oh, fascinating. I could keep asking you questions about this all day, and I can tell that you would keep patiently answering them. So for that, I'm very grateful. This has just been really, really wonderful. Thank you again for the time and for being such a wealth of knowledge in this space. I am definitely heading to your website to go get one of those big on the top, skinny bottom.
Yes, I have a perfect 90s boyfriend tee for you with a smiling mushroom on the back.
I will wear it with pride. Thanks again for coming. See you soon.
My pleasure. See you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Commerce is Chaos. If you're listening, I have a feeling you know just how much good leaving a 5-star review can do for a team. Drop us a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Commerce is Chaos wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our Substack, also called Commerce is Chaos, for more good stuff and actionable tools to build your business.